Welcome back once more. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission are set to be preparing, will be preparing for a fresh election in under 60 days, according to the ruling by the Supreme Court on Friday. We are speaking about the row that has kicked off when with the two sides of the political divide back on the campaign trail. NASA want members of the IEBC, if prosecuted, they want they do not want IEBC to conduct this election as is currently constituted. IEBC says that the IEBC, Jubilee side on the other side are defending the IEBC. There has been an interesting suggestion that the UN should come in and conduct this election, by none other than Dr. Ekuru Aukot.
Dr. Ekuru Aukot is a PhD in law. He's one of the guys who participated in coming up with this new constitution, 2010 constitution, and he knows for a fact that it's impossible for UN to come and conduct an election in Kenya. This election is going to be done by IEBC. What one would have expected of a person of Dr. Aukot's capacity in Kenya, because his intellectual infrastructure is overwhelming, is to start coming up with possible solutions on how we can get technical support for IEBC. Because even if you start dancing right now, there is no way you're going to run away from IEBC. It's the only body which is going to do this election. So instead, what NASA should be doing, and Jubilee, is doing a special audit to find out the challenges at IEBC, sort them out so that we go for an election. And the challenge that IEBC has been facing for the longest time is the commissioners do not realize that up to 75% of their responsibility is actually communications. For them to tell us these are the predictable systems we have created for unpredictable outcomes. Maybe Esbon should go and work with them to come up with a very solid communication strategy so that all Kenyans can now begin to understand these are the systems we've created and this is the way we are going to manage the results. But any other person, including NASA and Third Way Alliance, thinking that you are going to get a special body from Africa Union, European Union to come and run this election is they're shooting in the dark, because Kenya is not a failed state. Kenya is not a failed state. And when the Supreme Court made their ruling, they were very careful in their words. They said that IEBC failed to deliver a free and fair presidential election. They did not say that IEBC does not have capacity. It's very clear. IEBC has got capacity. So it's to identify among that set of commissioners who are compromised, among the senior managers who are compromised. Is it the list as read out by Raila Odinga? Are those the persons who've been compromised? Are they members of a cartel so that they be investigated? But imagining that you are going to kick out IEBC is unacceptable.
Jared, what is NASA's priority right now? Is it to campaign for this presidential election or to campaign for the removal of or the constitution of IEBC?
Well, you know, NASA has capacity to scale the steps as they chew the gum. That is important. The second thing that is of utmost importance is that IEBC has 7 commissioners, Supreme Court has 7 judges, and none of the numbers is supreme to the other. So you don't say 7 people made a decision to declare Uhuru Kenyatta president, but it is utterly wrong for a similar number to disturb that election. So we have to delineate the lines very well. It is clear right from the onset, the electoral laws and the constitution, that the only person and the only body that can vacate an election is the court of law. And we shouldn't castigate them when they have done their rightful duty. Now, in our address to the nation, a few hours after the declaration of the verdict, we did cite particular individuals who we know and we have evidence that tampered with the electoral process. Particular individuals, not IEBC. IEBC is composed of clerks, presiding officers, returning officers, the secretariat, all the line managers, so many people. While we did not cite problems right from the ground, we have particular individuals whom we think that having done what they did should not again be involved in conducting another round of election. And there are less than 10. We are talking about a workforce of over 50,000 people, over 50,000. But we only have problems with a few. We are saying those people and the boss, their chairperson has written a letter to the DCI and the DPP for investigation. And I want to believe that his list is the same as our list, so that these people can face criminal proceedings as we carry out with our elections. We are not going to allow few individuals who have been cited extensively by the Supreme Court to have messed the election to do it again. You don't correct an ill by perpetuating another ill. They will go.
Let's wind up this and talk about now back to the ballot for the presidential election, for a fresh presidential election in less than 58 days from now. Hezbon, where will this be won or lost?
Well, I think maybe the question should be, was it won by any of the two sides of the divide, so that we look at, do they have the capacity to repeat that? It is not clear. So where will this be won? I think looking at the temperatures on the ground and the fact that the ruling is likely to, bring in some element of voter apathy, I think the win is to look at the numbers that we had and how credible those numbers are, and focus on just cementing your strongholds and ensuring that the voter turnout is near 100%. Because it's a bit clear that both sides of the political divide can actually trace the traction of how Kenyans, were in agreement with their manifesto and what they presented during the campaign trail. And they can easily tell that this is the extent to which we cannot make any inroads in certain areas. So that to me would inform, their decision to just lock their strongholds, and where they think that there were irregularities that do not really reflect what was captured in the results that were relayed, they still need to go back and reassure the people that we know that you voted for us, or we know that you didn't vote for us, and do the right thing. In areas where they believe that the system manipulated the vote, I think whoever believes the system manipulated the vote has the task of convincing the voters that you need to turn up and vote again, because we know that this is not what you gave us more. And of course, it's also important to focus on, the established leaders that were sworn in, the MPs, the governors, and the senators, and the extent to which you're going to use their positions in different areas where, it is clear that they command respect, having won the election, and make use of the infrastructure that they have in place, the network that they have in place. And, to that extent, you may want to believe that Jubilee is likely to have an upper hand if they're going to use the infrastructure of the elected leaders. So NASA has to really work extremely hard, first to lock their areas, and secondly to target the areas that they feel they did well, but the system that they questioned and the process that they questioned tampered with the numbers. And just reassure people so that they turn up and vote again.
Mutinda, I'm going to ask you two questions that I'll ask Jared as well, because you are the only politicians here on this panel, the two of you. First of all, what is your analysis of this task as Jubilee going into another presidential election? And if NASA win, will you accept this?
Number one is about our task. The most important thing is going to be, there are two things that are going to be very important. I want to agree with him. First is our ability to mobilize our voters for voter turnout. We need to have a very high voter turnout, especially in our strongholds, which are very clear. So that is going to be our first task. And you need to note that there are some differences with this election when compared to the last one. In the last one, we had 6 positions. The MCA was mobilizing, the MP was mobilizing, the women rep were mobilizing, and that, of course, led to a much higher turnout, because there are people who came out to vote for different reasons. Actually, some came because of the MCA, because probably is a neighbor and they're in touch, and so that aspect is not going to be there. So that means that then the effort to get these people out has to be doubled, if not tripled. That is going to be very, very key. The other thing is that unlike in the other election, now the internal competition between the two camps is almost reduced. But there is the question of how did either parties deal with the fallout? Because there are some who still might be having issues to do with the fallout from the nomination and even the general election. And I think as Jubilee, we are probably much better in that regard, in terms of who are the people who are going to lead our campaigns in the respective areas. I think we harmonized after the nominations, and now that it is clear the people who emerged winners, it will be very easy for the rest to be urged to work with everybody, because they need to be reminded that whether it's governors, whether it's MPs, that this is really not their election. They already have their thing, and that they should have an all-inclusive campaign as much as possible to bring everybody on board. Being the incumbent, it is easier, of course, to hold people than those in the opposition, even if it is on the basis of promises. It's very difficult to promise someone when you're in the opposition.
All right.
But when you're in an incumbent, you can easily do that. Then let me say that the other thing that I think, and which actually made a difference in the past election, and which will again ensure that we win as Jubilee, is the issue of locking our strongholds. And I want to agree with him. The truth of the matter is this, that there is only one area that NASA was able to completely lock out Jubilee, where he comes from. That is Luo Nyanza. It is a fact. That is the only area that NASA was getting 90-something% of the vote. As compared to Jubilee, we have the whole of the Gema region that is locked. NASA is locked out. We have the whole of the Rift Valley. Almost forget about Turkana, with the exception probably of Turkana. The Rift Valley that is politically under the DP is again completely locked.
All right.
In their regions, talk of Western, talk of Lower Eastern, where we come from, Cumberland, talk of the coast. The truth of the matter is that NASA is unable to completely lock out Jubilee.
All right.
And that is what, to us, is going to provide the win, like it did previously in the just cancelled election. Yes.
All right.
Ben, what Kavemba is talking about are the numbers which have been declared null and void by IBC. The numbers is talking about locking. So we are going to see new numbers, because right now you cannot work or do your mathematics on an assumptions of the presidential numbers generated by IBC, because the Supreme Court has said from a qualitative aspects, they're null and void. From a quantitative aspect,
using the
they're null and
2013
void.
figures, my argument still remains valid. Even using the 2013 figures.
Jared?
Yes.
Well, Ben, I'm reminded of a few events during my high school. We had wayward individuals who would sometimes snatch your property and run away with it. But when caught, a good chunk will be celebrating, as the wayward individuals would be very absurd, gloomy, and very angry. I saw a bit of that after the declaration of results, declaration of the Supreme Court verdict. But suffice to say, anybody who attained 53% or 54% is facing the gravest challenge ever in the history of this country. Now that brings me to a fundamental point that my brother Dismas has raised. How sure are we that indeed those numbers were so coincidental that they reign at 53%? That is going to be challenged. And again, if you really want to prove our point, IEBC was given a task to go and open the servers for perusal. What did they do? They refused. Why? Because Raila won. Supposing they accepted to open those servers, and a court of law really does not declare a presidential winner without seeing the numbers. That is how they denied us an ultimate or outright victory at the Supreme Court. And they did it so deliberately, but they're going to pay for it.
All right.
So we're
you're
going
confident?
to see new numbers. We are very confident of a huge win. By the way, it's going to be over 2 million votes now, because
It's going to be more than 53%.
yeah, definitely. We are very confident. We were confident then. We can be confident today.
All right.
And that is why you see a lot of anger.
That's all I have time for.
There's something I would want to say before you know, the issue of going back to the issue that Raila had won. You know, that is not true. Because honestly, there is room for you to pray for a recount when you're sure that you've won. The law currently allows for, once a recount is done and it is determined that you are actually the winner and I was not the winner, there is a provision in law currently that allows you to be declared. So that argument is invalidated by the
I only have time for
the prayers that NASA gave.
I only have time
validate
for
that
two questions.
argument.
I'll give you time. I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay.
But even as you ask that, final question, will Raila Odinga accept if he loses this time round?
Very good. What he's talking about was done at Milimani courts when forms were ordered to be brought so that we could check with certainty that Jubilee actually won.
Okay.
What did they do with the forms? They tampered with them. They brought fake forms. They didn't have security features. They were literally fake right from the onset. Fake results.
All right.
That therefore brings into the issue that Raila indeed won that election. If they had anything to worry about, why bring fake things?
You should have
now,
tried.
if Raila Odinga,
Yes.
my presidential candidate and my party leader and my coalition leader will fairly lose this presidential election, fairly, if every issue is kept constant and he loses fairly, we shall be right there on the streets of Nairobi accepting defeat. And we would want to extend a similar olive to our opponents, that if Raila beats them the way he will, they should come out either from State House, Arambe House, or wherever, or from Gatundu, to accept that they have fairly lost, and Raila Odinga should move into State House and put this country in order.
Thank you. If Uhuru Kenyatta loses, he won the disputed...
You know, the question here should not be about that, because in 2002...
No, I'm asking the same question.
That's what I'm saying. The president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, is known to have conceded defeat, not once. He conceded when he lost Gatundu South, he conceded in 2002.
But that is debatable.
The person who is not on record, the person who is not on record, the person who is not on record having conceded defeat in an election is the NASA leader. It's important for that to go on record. Uhuru has conceded as an MP, he conceded in 2002.
He refused to concede in 2007.
So you're saying...
he was not on the ballot.
No, I mean 2013.
So you're saying that Uhuru Kenyatta is ready to concede if he loses?
In the very, very unlikely event. There's no way he's going to lose. I've given you reasons why we are winning.
All right, thank you,
We're actually looking forward to his commitment for NASA leader to
Ben, you haven't given me...
for the first time
30
ever.
seconds only.
Yes.
Hezbollah, let me start with you.
Okay,
30
now,
seconds.
I think, Ben, because I occupy the highest office in our democracy, citizenship, for me it is not a question of who will concede or who will not concede. The question is, what we are prepared for right now is a credible electoral process. And it doesn't matter whether it is Raila or Uhuru. Whoever wins in a credible and fair electoral process, Kenyans will celebrate him. And if you lose, Kenyans won't have a problem with you sending you home.
All right, this must be final thoughts.
At the end of the day, when you go for this rerun, what IBC must do is to ensure that every vote counts. This time around, that when you go cast your ballot, your vote should count. It's not the person who is counting who should count. It's your vote which should count. So that if Raila wins, he wins. If Uhuru wins, he wins. So that it's going to be easy to make a concession speech. Because that's the tragedy we are facing today.
All right, thank you. Political analysts Dismas Mokua and Hezbollah Wheeler. Member of Parliament for Nyando, that is Jared Okello, and Jubilee strategist Mutinda Kavemba. Thank you so much for coming to my show this morning, putting a lot on perspective. Also, we leave it, and it is back to the ballot for both sides of the political divide in preparation for a fresh presidential election as ordered by the Supreme Court of the land on Friday, and that is what Kenyans will be focusing on now. The next bone of contention likely to be the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission under massive pressure, an internal purge, so to speak, by both sides of the political divide. Again, what gives for the Wafula Chebukati-led commission? We are keeping an eye on that story for you. It is back to the ballot in the next 60 days. That's why we leave it on the program. Thanks for watching. See you on Sunday next week. I'm Ben Katili. Bye for now.